In 1480, Ferdinand Magellan was born in the northern part of Portugal. Around this time, Portugal started exploring the seas along Africa to find new trade routes. One of the country's big goals was to discover a new sea route to the Indies, where spices, considered luxury items in Europe, were sourced. Soon, Spain also began organizing voyages, but they headed west, eventually reaching America, which was unknown to Europe at the time. To prevent conflicts over these newly discovered lands, both powers agreed in 1494 to divide the world between them. Spain could claim lands to the west of the Tordesillas Meridian, and Portugal could claim those to the east. In 1513, the Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa became the first European to discover sea on the other side of the Americas, which he named the South Sea. Ferdinand Magellan, who had sailed for Portugal for many years, particularly in the Indian Ocean, heard about this discovery and began dreaming of finding a new route to the Spice Islands by sailing west, bypassing America. However, the King of Portugal opposed this idea, as Portugal already controlled the sea route to the Indies via Africa. In 1517, Magellan tried his luck with the young Spanish King Charles V, who was more interested in his plan. If successful, it would open a new maritime route to the Indies, allowing Spain to import spices directly and compete with Portugal, which was getting richer from the control of the Indian Ocean trade. The Spanish king accepted the project. When the King of Portugal learned of this, he tried to stop Magellan's expedition to protect his interests. On September 20th, 1519, Magellan set sail from Sanlúcar with 5 ships and 239 men. After a stop in Tenerife, the fleet sailed towards Brazil. After passing the Rio de la Plata, they ventured into unknown waters, looking for a passage to the South Sea. At the end of March, as the southern hemisphere began to cool, the expedition decided to spend the winter at a place Magellan named Puerto San Julian. Once they settled, a mutiny broke out against Magellan, led by the captains of the other ships. They saw the mission as a failure, and some wanted to return to Spain. Magellan acted swiftly and harshly to regain control, executing some of the rebels. While in this area, the crew encountered tall locals, whom they called Patagons, a name that would later be used to describe the region, Patagonia. In May, one of the ships was sent south to explore, but it sank. After 5 months of waiting, the weather improved, and the remaining 4 ships continued their journey. In October, they reached a strait that Magellan named the Strait of All Saints, which would later bear his name. As they entered the strait, they saw fires burning on the mainland, and Magellan named the region Tierra del Fuego, or Land of Fire. Further along, they reached a fork in the path, and they split up to explore both directions. During the night, one of the captains, Estevao Gomez, took the opportunity to turn back and return to Spain, accusing Magellan of treason. Gomez was later arrested, and Magellan's family was put under strict surveillance until his return. On November 28, 1520, the 3 remaining ships exited the strait and entered a vast ocean. They sailed through it, but water and food began to run out. The crew survived by eating rats, sawdust, and the ox hides that covered the masts. They also suffered from scurvy due to a lack of fresh food. Despite the challenges, the weather remained calm, and Magellan named the ocean Pacific, meaning peaceful. After 99 days of sailing, on March 6, they spotted an island. As they tried to trade with the locals, the islanders began to steal from them, including a small boat. Magellan quickly decided to leave, naming the island of Thieves. The expedition then reached the Philippines, where interactions with the locals were more peaceful, and they traded European goods for fresh food. To impress the locals, Magellan fired cannons regularly. In Cebu, Magellan formed an alliance with the powerful Raja Humabon, and the locals were converted to Christianity. However, on the nearby island of Mactan, the local chief Lapu-Lapu refused to recognize Spanish authority. Magellan, with 60 men, went to confront him, but upon landing, they were met by about 1,500 locals, and Magellan was killed in the battle. A few days later, about 20 Spaniards attended a banquet organized by Raja Humabon, only to be ambushed and massacred. Only 108 men managed to escape. The remaining crew split into 2 of the 3 remaining ships and burned the 3rd. On November 7th, 1521, the expedition reached the Spice Islands, the Moluccas, where they filled their ships with clothes and provisions. The goal had been achieved, but now the new leader, Juan Sebastián Elcano, had to navigate back to Spain without being caught by the Portuguese, who were searching for them at sea. There was another issue. The ship Trinidad was leaking. Elcano decided to leave it behind to be repaired while continuing with the other ship, Victoria, heading west. On February 12, 1522, Elcano entered the Indian Ocean, crossing it far to south to avoid being spotted by the Portuguese. Meanwhile, Trinidad struggled with storms and was forced to return to the Moluccas, where the 17 remaining crew members surrendered to a Portuguese ship. On the other hand, Victoria rounded the Cape of Good Hope and sailed back toward Europe. But with a shortage of food and water, many of the crew suffered from scurvy. Elcano stopped at Cape Verde, a Portuguese colony, where he and his crew hid their identities and pretended they were returning from America. During conversation, they realized it was Thursday, while their logbook said it was Wednesday. They thought it was a mistake. 13 sailors left the ship to buy food, but were caught when one of them used cloves, which only grew in the Moluccas, as payment. The Portuguese realized who they were and arrested the sailors. Elcano and the rest of his crew barely managed to escape and continue their journey. On September 6, 1522, after almost 3 years at sea, Elcano and 17 survivors arrived back in Sanlúcar. The spices they brought back helped cover the expedition's expenses, and they became the first people to successfully sail around the world, unless Enrique de Malacca, a slave who had accompanied Magellan, managed to return earlier. Enrique spoke Malay and was the only survivor of the ambush. If he returned to his homeland before Elcano, he would be the first person to circumnavigate the globe, completing the journey in 11 years.